Matt Whitaker is the former acting U.S. Attorney General. We'll get his take on all of this. You know, Matt, there are a couple of ways to go on this. You can go back to the old Nixonian thing, what did he know and when did he know it? But maybe more worrisome is what if he didn't know and all of this was happening unbeknownst to him? That raises a whole nother series of questions. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Neil, it's good to be with you today. I think the biggest question here is what are the facts of the Joe Biden documents? Because, you know, we seem to know almost everything. We've seen pictures of the documents spread along the floor at Mar-a-Lago. In this case, we haven't seen pictures of the documents. You know, what Merrick Garland, when he knew what he's been doing. I fully expect Merrick Garland knew these documents existed and was hoping to run out the clock, that this would never see the light of day. And, you know, now he's caught in a really difficult question because, as we've talked about before, there is a two-tiered system of justice where, you know, they come after Donald Trump and his, you know, associates with much more power and enthusiasm than they do Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, and what appears to be at least similar acts. And again, we don't know enough on the Joe Biden piece, but this second tranche that was found in a locked garage with his Corvette is outrageous. I mean, this is, you know, these are classified documents, and there should be some care taken to protect the contents.
Do you think he knew they were there, though? I mean, because they were very clear, that is the Biden administration people, when their comparisons were invariably made, who are you to you know, criticize Donald Trump and documents found at his Mar-a-Lago home. And they were quick to respond in defense of the president. Well, at least he didn't have them stashed at his home. Turns out he did. But again, it comes back to whether he even knew that. And I don't know what's worse.
Yeah. Well, and remember, this first tranche that was found at the Penn Biden Center was found in a manila envelope marked personal. And so we need to know who put them in that envelope, who marked it personal. If Joe Biden did that, that to me as a prosecutor says that was a intent to conceal. And that's very concerning. And so, you know, again, this is where Merrick Garland, you know, the Attorney General's job is not easy. I know that firsthand. But I will tell you, this is where Merrick Garland needs to be above politics. He's not to protect the president. What he's supposed to do is he's supposed to do justice and be blind as the application of justice and have the law apply equally to all citizens. And this is a test for him, and he's either going to fail it or pass it in the next hour. I fully expect that he's going to fail it because that's what he's been doing for his entire term.
So he can do a variety of things. What would you like to see him do, Matt?
Well, what I would like him to do is two things. I'd like him to appoint a special counsel, although I know John Loesch in Chicago, and he's a good U.S. attorney. But I think this needs to be the same rules applied to everyone, and that would be a special counsel and a statement by the Attorney General saying that we will use the same legal standard to evaluate these cases.
So if he doesn't do that, at the very least, this you know, avalanche of investigations and special counsels and punishment being called for Donald Trump, I would imagine that goes away.
I think it does. I mean, as soon as these documents were found in Biden's possession and now at various locations, I think it took a lot of the steam out of the Donald Trump investigation. Again, there was not a prosecutable case there. We've talked about that before, but certainly that was the sword of Damocles hanging over you know, Donald Trump and his campaign. But now that Joe Biden, and he can point to Joe Biden and say he did it too, and you're treating me differently, I think that takes a lot of the you know, the steam out of that investigation.
Real quickly, Matt, do you think there are other documents? And this is a process that seems out of control, not only with this president and, of course, what was found at Mar-a-Lago, whether it's justified or not with Donald Trump, but we've seen it with General Petraeus and Sandy Berger, you know, hiding documents in his socks or whatever it was. Yeah. There's a history of this craziness. Why is that? Why are these documents so spread out, and even the institutions that have control of them don't even know where they are or get late wind of, oh, well, this one's missing?
Well, right, and that's what we learned about the Donald Trump case, is that there was a log and they were looking for specific documents that were missing. In Joe Biden's case, it doesn't seem that there was any log, that these were purloined out of the White House without anybody knowing. I know that when I handled classified documents, I never kept them on my desk, made sure they were in the SCIF, certainly didn't take them home. I'm surprised how cavalier Joe Biden was as vice president, and that he would have them in boxes with his Corvette in his garage in Wilmington. It's just, you know, again, this is, you either apply these rules the same, or you end up with this two-tiered system of justice where, you know, the Biden administration appears to be wanting to go after Donald Trump and are going to use any means necessary, but now that's kind of blown up in their face. Yeah,
it'd be even wilder if they were in the glove compartment of said Corvette. Then it's a whole nother issue. But we don't know if that happened. All right.
We don't know that, Neil.
Not yet. Thank you, my friend, very much, and Happy New Year. Appreciate your expertise into Matt Whitaker, the former acting U.S. attorney.